In July 1914, French naval guns rained high-explosive shells onto the coastal towns of Sussex, obliterating centuries-old churches and reducing neighborhoods to rubble. Inland, Russian Cossacks rode through the streets of Eastbourne, dragging families from their homes and executing them in the gutters. This scenario should have been a strategic impossibility. For centuries, the British Isles relied on a formidable geographic moat, protected by the undisputed, overwhelming firepower of the Royal Navy. Yet in a single week, 300,000 Franco-Russian troops successfully unloaded their horses, artillery, and infantry onto English beaches, without a single British battleship firing a shot in defense. To execute an invasion of that scale across the English Channel requires absolute naval supremacy. The analytical mystery is how an invading coalition bypassed the most heavily armed fleet on Earth to land directly on British soil. The weapon that broke the empire was not a fleet, but a single spy sitting at a desk in Whitehall, stamping a forged document. His codename was Tomsk, but to the elite gentlemen's clubs of London, he was Count von Hoffmann, a wealthy, charming German aristocrat who openly admired British culture while quietly observing its weaknesses. He operated flawlessly in plain sight by using the escalating crisis in the Balkans as a geopolitical smokescreen. While British intelligence was entirely consumed by Kaiser Wilhelm's aggressive military posturing in Berlin, Hoffmann went to work on his true targets. He focused on young, idealistic clerks in the Foreign Office. These were men like Raymond Clinton, who held high-level clearances to transcribe sensitive treaties, but lacked any operational training in how to spot an agent of the Tsar. Hoffmann flattered these clerks, playing to the high society arrogance that sensible men of reason could prevent global conflict through secret agreements negotiated over expensive lunches. The British establishment was so convinced of its own diplomatic brilliance that it allowed a hostile operative to walk through its inner chambers entirely unvetted. While he charmed junior diplomats by day, Hoffmann spent his nights managing a brutal underground operational pipeline. He targeted Admiralty clerks with massive gambling debts, using the threat of exposure to extract the specific, highly classified summer patrol schedules of the Channel Squadron. In the slums of the East End, he used the threat of execution to force master forgers to create impeccable fake diplomatic and military credentials. He eventually combined these stolen schedules and forgeries to create a masterstroke of sabotage, a set of Admiralty telegraph orders, transmitted via punched tape, that would trick the British fleet into leaving its home waters. These isolated acts of coercion and theft were systematically integrated into a single plan designed to leave the coastline open for the arriving Franco-Russian fleet. The forged orders were effective. Believing he was acting on direct authority from London, Admiral Shaw sailed the entire Channel Squadron toward the Mediterranean on a phantom mission to deter the Ottomans. With the primary shield of the Empire hundreds of miles away, the back door was left unguarded. The invading fleet crossed the Channel and struck the coast uncontested. Inside the capital, the failure was total. London descended into anarchy as panicked crowds filled the streets, while anarchist factions used the breakdown of order to launch a series of bombings in the government district. The island fortress did not fall to superior technology. It fell because its defenders were tricked into looking the other way. When the deception was finally revealed via secure cables, Admiral Shaw red-lined his dreadnought's engines to race back. His return was a calculated act of vengeance, obliterating the French supply fleet that was still anchored off the coast. But on land, the situation was desperate. Civilian volunteers were rushed into the trenches and handed colonial-era Martini Henry rifles, facing a modern, mechanized army with single-shot weapons that were 30 years out of date. For Raymond Clinton, the reality set in as he stood in those trenches. He recalled the particular language Hoffmann had asked about during their lunches, phrasing that matched the forged orders exactly. Realizing he had been the proofreader for his country's downfall, he abandoned his rifle to hunt Hoffmann in the city. The conflict split into two fronts, a massive, desperate military struggle for national survival, and a solitary shadow war for personal justice. As the invasion continued, the sheer scale of the coastal atrocities began to shift the global political landscape. In Washington, the debate over neutrality reached a breaking point. President Woodrow Wilson was presented with aerial photographs of the burned churches in Brighton. His advisors argued that if Britain fell, a hostile Russian-French fleet based in the North Sea could blockade the entire American eastern seaboard within a week. Facing an existential threat to global trade and security, Wilson abandoned isolationism. 10,000 American troops arrived in Southampton, providing the fresh manpower needed to stall the invasion. This war proved that an empire can raise millions of men and build the greatest fleets on Earth. But those defenses are only as strong as the internal security of the government that commands them. The true threat to a superpower is its own internal hubris. It only takes one traitor with a pen to bypass 1,000 warships and burn an empire to the ground.